Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about MTH's Subway set that I recently picked up. MTH just recently re-released these, and these are the R40 Subway sets. Really cool sets. One of the main features is this automated sort of train system they have in here that you can program, which we'll talk about. But I've been looking for a Subway set for a while, and I plan to do an elevated line on my layout from one side of the layout to the other. There's a reason for it. I'm not going to tell you yet because I want it to be a surprise for why I'm doing that. But basically, I've been looking for a Subway set, and on the secondary market, for some reason, they're really expensive. So when I think I saw this on the forum, one of the vendors, one of the train shops, advertised that these had just come in. It was about the beginning of October, I think it was, and I picked up this set, figuring, hey, it's PS3. These are really nice because these happen to be plated, so they give that stainless steel plated look on them. And it's a 4-car R40 Subway set, and so I picked these up. And so yeah, so we're gonna go over the details of the set, the features, the functionality, and then we're gonna show you how to actually program these and all the different things that you can do with these sets. So should be pretty fun. So let's jump into this because these things are pretty cool. All right, guys, so let's just talk a little bit about, of course, you know me, the history of this particular subway car type, which is the R40. So the R40s were a set of new cars that were designed by one of the most famous 20th century industrial designers, Raymond Loewy, I think is how you pronounce his last name. But the New York City Transit Authority basically put an order in for a new design of cars in sort of the late 60s, and Raymond Loewy is the one who they hired to design these cars. So he's pretty famous. He did things like Coke vending machines, Air Force One's paint scheme. He did the GG1 for the Pennsylvania Railroad and all that, the fleet of modernism stuff that happened in the late 30s. So pretty famous industrial designer. And so what he did is he basically took these subway cars and he changed the ends of them to give it sort of this slanted design or look, right? To sort of make them a little more modern, basically. And they actually used these molded fiberglass sort of end caps on the subway cars, and they had like this 15-degree slant to them. And so they put the order in, they went into production. They were made by the St. Louis Car Company. They were like 60 foot. And basically they put them in service in March of like 68. And by April, they had discovered they actually had a issue. I don't know if you'd call it a design flaw, but it was a design issue where they found that when the two cars that had the slanted ends were facing each other, it was dangerous for people to walk between the cars because there was nothing for them to hold on to or grab onto. So you had this wide gap, sort of. And what they did is they decided to put these ugly sort of pantographed gates on the ends to, basically solve their solution. But the problem was these were never tested. They never tested them out. They just ordered them, put them into production to make the cars, and then they put them right into service. So it's kind of a funny little history of these cars. And that's why on these models right here, if we zoom in a little bit, you can see that has these sort of weird pantograph gates like hanging off the end of them. And of course that ruined the entire design, the whole point of the modern design of the car. But that's what they had to do initially to make it safer for people to walk between the cars, which is kind of funny. Eventually they did take off the slanted fiberglass ends and they put the regular flat ends back on. And they were changed from a designation of like R40 to R40M for modified. And they, I think, remained in service until like 2008 or 9 or something like that. So, but kind of a funny little history to these where, they were ordered and designed by a very famous industrial designer. Unfortunately, everybody just thought it was going to work and nobody tested it. And then, of course, they actually ruined the design by having to put these ugly gates and stuff on the ends to make it safer for people to walk through. So considered one of his flops, basically, out of all the things that he did. So kind of funny. But anyway, that's what this set is representing from MTH here. So they made it with those slanted ends on them, and then the extra gating on the end of it too. So, but like I said before, this particular set is it happens to be a plated set. So really nice plating on these sets, and it has a very glossy silvery paint finish on the top of the cars and everything. They do have interiors on them, so we'll try to take a look at that when they're lighted up. But basically it has some benches in there. It's got the poles that you would normally see in a Subway. It's got the little grab handles along the roof line. Even up on the top, if you look up inside the car, up to the top of the roof, they have some detail for vents and things like that. Typical stuff you'd see in a Subway car, so really cool. And then on the ends and stuff, they have some details, so let's take a look at those. So you can see on the ends, you will see in one of the windows right here, you can see the engineer who's driving the car. It's got a little windshield wiper there. On the other one, of course, it has whatever the line it is. This happens to be the A line. And then you'll see some lights on the front here. So on the powered car, and there's only one in the set, there's basically a headlight and end of marker light. So that light will switch back and forth depending which direction you go. On one of the 4 cars that's in the set here, there is a switch on the bottom of it. So it would be the end car at the other end from the engine. And that switch allows you to set those same lights that you're seeing right here on the powered car. You can set them to either be permanently as an end of train light or a headlight. Unfortunately, that last car, or all the other cars in the set, do not have any electronics in them besides the LED stuff, so there's no communication for it to be able to switch back and forth depending on the direction. Only the engine powered unit can do that. So on the end car, you have a choice to keep it one way or the other. Now, why would you have the choice? Well, it's because later on we'll find out when we're programming these in the 2 different modes that you can program them in, which are either loop mode or end to end mode. You may decide which way to set your lights based on that. So, and we'll talk about the difference there. But it does have the one car that has the switch on it that lets you set those lights permanently. So obviously it's going to be the slanted end that has the lights on it right here. If you notice in between the cars right here, there are normal flat ends between the cars. Now, I think the only thing that I don't like about the set really is just this huge gap between the cars, right? Obviously, it's because of 2 reasons. One, they want to run this on 42 curves. So in order to make those tighter curves, they're giving a lot more gap between the cars. But it's mostly because of the standard O-gauge couplers, right? I really wish that they had sort of redesigned these to use different couplers between the 2 flat ends, or actually any portions of the cars, right? But they're using the standard couplers, which of course take up a huge amount of space and they leave a large gap. So if you thought it was dangerous walking between the cars with the slanted ends, look at the look at the ones with the flat ends. You have to make a jump across there, so kind of funny, but just joking on that. And yeah, otherwise really nice detail. It's got some roof detail too, some riveting on the top there. It's got the little signs right here to tell you the line, basically. Where is it? Right here. So you can see Manhattan to Far Rockaway for the A line. And they come in 2 pairs, right? So on this particular set, it's car 414 and 4415, and then 4424 and 4425 on the 2 end ones. Now, they did make a 2-pack add-on that you could get for these also, and that just adds 2 more, non-powered dummy cars onto the set. So you could get a total 6-car set with the same line number if you wanted to. One other thing I forgot to mention, it does have powered couplers on the powered car. So on both sides of it, you can obviously use the uncouple feature to remotely uncouple those two. All right, so before we get into all the special features of the Subway sets and the programming mode, let's just, look at it from a normal engine standpoint and just we'll go through some of the basics and the sounds and things like that. So let's start her up here. So got some basic, electric Subway sounds coming out of there. Let's try the horn on this one. Sounds pretty typical for a New York Subway horn. And then the bell button actually goes to the sort of the buzzer, which is the sound that they kind of made when they're ready to sort of move again, getting ready to move, basically close the doors and move on to the next stop. So this is what it sounds like. So that would be the bell button would activate that. Now, I didn't know about that sound. I actually learned about that after I got this set. Because at first when I heard it, I'm like, what is that sound? I thought there was something wrong with it. But in actuality, that is the true sound that they actually made. So a little piece of history I didn't know that I learned about while I was going through this set. Now, one of the pieces that you're probably familiar with is on the remote is the PFA button or the passenger freight announcements. On the Subway sets, that button doesn't do anything. You have to activate the station stop sounds and everything a different way when you're working with the Subway sets, which we'll go over in a second, but they are completely operated in a different way. Everything else on here is about the same. You still have the coupler front and rear coupler, so same sounds, and of course if it's on the engine it will uncouple it. Same boost. As far as the labor goes up and down, there's really not anything that goes much with that. And then, there's no smoke on these, obviously, or anything like that, since they would be electric, but the standard volume up and down and all that stuff still works. Okay. And then on top of that, you of course have your soft keys that go across your remote as usual, right? And, all the soft keys that start with S are for sound. So you'll see a lot of familiar ones on there, right? So like the SFS and SRS, right? For the signal crossings and things like that. And then it also has some of the basic sounds for some of the like S1, S2, S3 here, which are some of the station stops basically on this particular model.
Far Rockaway, Mott Avenue. Howard Beach, JFK Airport.
Okay, but your main thing when you're dealing with the sounds is you have to go to the trolley menu. And the way you get to the trolley menu is it's this MTC soft key. That's the first soft key on the menu. And when you get to the trolley menu, then you'll see 5 other soft keys that appear on the menu. And if you go to the last one, this is going to be the manual mode. And then on the manual mode, there's 2 choices there called FSS and ARM. So these are the station stops here manually if you want to trigger them. So every time you hit the S1 button for this soft key, it's going to manually trigger a stop.
Next stop, 168th Street, Washington Heights. Next stop, Far Rockaway, Mott Avenue. Next stop, Howard Beach, JFK Airport. Next stop, Broadway Junction. Next stop, Utica Avenue. Next stop, J Street, Borough Hall. Next stop, Broadway Nassau, Fulton Street. Next stop, 42nd Street, Port Authority Bus Terminal. Next stop, 168th Street, Washington Heights. Next stop, 207th Street, Inwood. Next stop, Far Rockaway, Mott Avenue.
Okay, so as you cycle through that, that's what that will do. The other thing is when you're in manual mode, if you hit the arm button, that means it arms it for the next stop. So if you hit that, when you start moving the train manually, just like you normally would with the throttle, when you stop it, it'll automatically then play the next one because you're sort of pre-arming it with the arm button right here. And then it'll automatically play the next one when you come to the stop, so you don't have to go back to the menu and actually hit the FSS key. Now this is all manual, so if you're just running the subway manually around your layout with your remote and you want to trigger a station stop every so often, that's how you would do it in the manual mode. Okay? But the whole key to this sort of subway set and the electronics in it is to be able to do it in, let me shut this down here so I don't have to keep yelling, but basically it's so you can do this all automatically. And you're still going to use this menu if you're in the DCS mode to program it and set everything, but really what you can do with these is set up a whole bunch of stops, however many that you want, and you can pick the station announcement that goes with it out of the choices that are in the system. And then what you can do is set it to either a point-to-point mode or a loop mode. So loop mode would be if you have the set and it goes around an entire trolley loop from start to finish and it ends up back at the same place. When you go to the point-to-point mode, or out and back they call it, really what it means is that it's a single track where you're going all the way to the end and it stops, and then you're reversing and going back the same way back to the other end, right? So it's almost like a straight line back to back, and that's what that means. And you can set it so it automatically will do that, and you can set the starting point and then how many times you want it to stop. You can set the announcement that goes with each stop, and then again set it to either loop mode if it's just going to start the whole process over when it gets to the first stop again, or out and back mode, which basically means I'm going to go all the way to the end of the line and I'm going to reverse and then go back the opposite direction and keep going back and forth, back and forth. So that's kind of cool because you could set up a separate trolley line on your layout and then just have it on. Once you get it going, basically you put it in auto mode and you let it go, it'll just keep going back and forth however you want it to. Okay, now again, that's going to be on this MTC menu. So I do have to say that the instructions that come with these sets is pretty much good for kindling for firewood, and that's about it, because I don't know why MTH does this. And I've noticed this with all their engines that I've gotten, even the standard gauge stuff, where I look in the manual and instead of telling me about the DCS system, which is their premier system that they advertise, right? The only thing in the instruction manual for the engines is about DCC, which uses F commands, which don't have anything to do with these, or conventional mode. So how do you control it with the transformer buttons, like the bell button and the horn button, right? But they don't have anything in there about any of the soft keys or anything that goes with the engine that you just purchased, which I've never understood why. So the manual that you absolutely want to get if you're dealing with DCS engines is the DCS companion guide. So it is this guide right here, guys. I'm sure you've all heard of it. Barry Brozowitz actually wrote it. This is the 3rd edition. You can get this on Amazon if you don't know where to get it. But basically, this guide will tell you everything about DCS, not only setting it up and everything, but also just stuff like this, the trolleys and the subway systems that have these special sort of features in them that you can program. Because without it, you're not going to know unless you have done it before and somebody's taught it to you. You won't know, because when you look under these menus, like if I go under MTC here, I mean, it's a bunch of cryptic codes that I have no idea what they mean. And if you don't do them in the right order and the right combinations, you're not going to be able to program the cars. So just a side note, that I noticed that once I got into the DCS system, that guide has been invaluable on everything that I've wanted to do. And anytime I don't understand something or I need to find out how something works, it's been in that guide. And the guide has a whole section on subways and trolleys, which applies to this. And everything I'm about to show you, I got out of that guide. So just FYI. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to have it run around in what they call auto mode, which is basically going to stop at all the different station stops automatically by itself. And you just get it started is all you do. So what you're going to do is, again on the remote here, I know it's probably hard to see in the light here, but basically you're going to go to that first menu, MTC, and then you're going to see this second menu called FAS. So when you select that,
Auto mode.
it says it's in auto mode right now. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to set the engine to a certain speed. So I'm just going to use the quick speed, and I'm going to set it to like 25. And then we're going to watch it go around the layout and listen to the sounds that happen. So let's fire it up.
JFK Airport. Connections available to JFK Air Train.
Okay, so it stopped by itself. Like, I'm going to put the remote down here. It's going to play some sounds every time it stops, and they're a little bit different each stop, besides the station announcement.
Passengers, please do not transfer train calls while the train is in motion.
Again, this is my other hand. I'm holding the one with the camera. This is my other hand, so no remote in my hand.
Next stop, Broadway Junction.
So it just takes off by itself.
This stop, Broadway Junction. Newspapers and your personal belongings with you when you leave the train. Pardon me. Passengers, please do not transfer train calls while the train is in motion. Next stop, Utica Avenue. This stop, Utica Avenue.
So there it stopped again.
Passengers, please do not transfer train calls while the train is in motion. Next stop, J Street Borough Hall.
There it goes again.
Please allow passengers to get off the train before boarding.
Now, this will keep going through a loop, basically, as it goes through all the announcements, all the stops.
Broadway, Nassau, Fulton Street.
And it'll just keep going
Broadway, Nassau,
over and over again.
Please take newspapers and your personal belongings with you when you leave the train.
But you can also set it to the out and back mode too, automatically, and it would do the same thing as soon as it came to the end.
8th Avenue Express. Pardon me. Please stand clear of the closing doors. Next stop, 42nd Street, Port Authority Bus Terminal. This stop is at 8th Avenue Express.
So it just said it was the last stop.
Please stand clear of the closing doors. Pardon? Next stop, 168th Street.
So you see it's going back in the opposite direction right now. See that? So that was the last stop.
168th Street.
And now it's going back.
Transfer is available to the one train. 42nd Street, Port Authority Bus Terminal.
Now, if you want to stop this, all you have to do is, again, go back to the MTC menu and go back to FAS.
The train.
And you'll be in manual mode now. So at this point, then you can control the train manually. All right, so you get the picture of like kind of how it works in automatic mode. But this menu, this MTC menu, is super critical on the trolleys. Unlike most of the soft keys, which aren't that big a deal for most of the regular engines. So let's just go over the buttons so you know what they mean. So MTC again is the main menu that you click in, that soft key, to get into, when you hit it there, into trolley mode. And then you've got 5 menus that appear right at the bottom when you're in trolley mode. So the first one there, MLM, that's for learn mode. That's what you're going to use when you want to program your own station stops and distances and everything in this trolley, which we'll show you how to do. But you're going to have a very specific section of track that you're probably running this on, especially if it's out and back, end-to-end point type of line. And you're going to want to start it at a certain point, stop it at a particular station stop, start it up again, and then finally end, and then you're going to want to reverse it and come back the other direction. So everything's done in program mode in that first one, which we'll get to later. The second one, FAS, is auto mode. So basically that just toggles you between auto and manual mode. So every time you hit it, it goes back and forth. So when you're in auto mode, which you just saw in the video, the train will automatically stop at all the stations and go through its sequences around the track, and depending which way you have it set, it'll either keep going as a loop or it will reverse. Okay. The next one on the menu is the FOL. That one is the toggle between the out and back and the loop mode when you're in auto mode. So if you actually hit that right on this menu, it does two things. It puts it right away in auto mode, and it sets it to either out and back or loop, depending, you know, how many times you hit it and toggle it. The one right next to it, FAR, that one is for toggling between all stops and random stops. Now, I had it set to all stops, so it went through every single stops when you saw it running around, but you can also set it to random stops, where it will randomly just pick a station stop also. And they don't have to be in a particular order. So that's a feature you can do, and you just toggle it back and forth with that button. And then the last one, MMM, is the manual mode. So that basically, when you put it into the MMN mode, then it allows you to manually play the station stops if you're just manually running the engine, and also do something called ARMS. So if I hit that, it'll take me to FSS, which basically means every time I hit that soft key, it's going to play one of the next station stops. Or I can also then hit the ARM soft key, and that soft key basically means that it's going to arm the next announcement stop. So when I depart from wherever I am right now, the current stop, it arms it for the next one automatically, so that even though I'm in manual mode, I don't have to actually hit the FSS button again to actually trigger the next announcement. It sort of pre-arms it for the next stop is basically what it does. Not something I think I'd probably even use, but it is available in there. But that's one of the choices there. So you have all those choices when you're in the MTC in the trolley menu here, when you go back here. Now if you pick one of these, like suppose I just pick the FOL, which basically means I want to toggle between the out and back and the loop mode. As soon as I hit FOL, it'll tell me which one it is, and it automatically puts it into auto mode at the same time. So I actually don't have to go to another menu to do it. if I want to switch it back to manual mode, then I would go back to the main trolley menu, and I have to hit FAS to get back to manual mode. And then when I'm in manual mode, now I can control it again manually. So this menu is super important, and you know, one of the things I've never really been a fan of with the MTH system is these cryptic soft key codes that they use. And I've gotten used to some of them that I know off the top of my head now, but there's so many different engines, and something, you know, like this is going to be super important for the subways and the trolleys. So of all the menus that you want to try to memorize the soft keys, it would be the MTC one for the trolleys and the subways. And that's pretty much it. Now, the way that you actually program this is still going to be through the remote here. And then we're going to actually set it to the number of stops that we want, which actually station sounds that we want to have play at those stops, and then, you know, if we're going to do the out and back or the loop. So you can actually set this so that the subway, say, only goes 3 stops instead of like the 8 or whatever that are in here automatically. And then you can actually set the distances between each of those stops too. So if you have like buildings or stations along your route and you want it to stop at a particular place, you're going to do that by just programming it in and telling it exactly when to start and stop. Now, it's based on the distance that it travels. So obviously you always want to start from the same exact location or as close to it as you can get. You also want to use the same speed that you've been using. So luckily with the MTH remote, of course you guys know that you can do the quick speed by just pushing down on the remote. You get the quick speed, and then you type in on the keypad down at the bottom here, right, the number of the speed you want. So if you do that, then what's nice about that is you always be in the same speed, and everything should be pretty close of where the subway stops and starts from. And then the other thing is you want to keep in mind is that you want to make sure that if you're using a 4-car subway set, that you're always using the 4 cars. And when you're programming it, you make sure that you're programming it with the 4 cars. Don't just program it with the engine, because those 3 extra cars you're adding on are going to put drag on it, and then your stops could be off a little bit. So it's not, you know, 100% perfect, but it's probably pretty close when it's all said and done. So if you have a nice subway line and you've got a little room at the end of each one, you should be able to make it go from end to end, back and forth automatically with the exact stops that you want. Now, like I said before, this is the A line for the New York A line. So the New York A line has these very specific streets and stops. So I know that when MTH produced this set, they made a couple different sets. I think they had the B line, and I forget what the other one was. I think there were 3 of them, but anyway, they had different streets, you know, different station stops, obviously, in those. So, but you can't change those. You can't change the actual station stops to what you want, but like you can't record your own. But obviously, you just use one of the ones that's in the system. And that's probably the most important piece there is this MTC menu that's on the remote. So what we're going to do next is we're going to actually, just to give a demo of how you do it, program in 3 stops, and we're going to do an out and back. So we're going to program 3 stops, then we're going to start her up at the first stop, and then watch it as it stops at each of the 2 other stops, and then reverses and goes back the other direction. Alright, so here we have it at our first, this is where we're going to start. Let's just say this tower is our first stop right here. So what we're going to do is put it in programming mode. So the first thing you got to do is on the remote, again, you're going to go back to the MTC menu right here. And then when you get there, it's the first menu called MLM, and you're going to hear the subway say something once I push this.
Learn mode.
Okay, so now we're in learn mode. Now that we're in learn mode, another menu pops up with the LST, save, SOB, and SLP. So the list is the station stop announcements, and you just keep hitting it to scroll through it until you find the one you want.
Far Rockaway, Mott Avenue.
So we're going to start with the Far Rockaway one, and then you're going to hit the save soft key to save that.
Save.
Okay, so now it's saved our first stop right there, basically, and it's been assigned to this first station stop. So now what we're going to do is drive the subway to the next stop where we want it to be, and we're going to drive it slowly enough so you can stop at a really precise location, right? So we're going to stop it over here at the, I think the oil drum loader right here. So we're just going to use the throttle. And we're going to stop it right there. Okay, so now we're at our second place, right? Our second stop, basically. We're going to press that LST key again on the remote.
Howard Beach, JFK Airport.
So we'll try that as our second one, and we're going to hit the save button again.
Save.
All right, so now we've got 2 in here. Now we're just going to go one more. We're going to go down here to the other little tower right here. Okay, and now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hit the LST button to pick one of our stops.
Broadway Junction.
Let's pick a different one.
Utica Avenue.
Nope.
J Street, Borough Hall. Broadway, Nassau. Fulton Street.
Okay, we'll try that one. Broadway, Nassau, and we'll hit save.
Save.
Alright, so now we've got, like, basically what we've done is we've got 3 of these saved inside here. Alright, now that we've done that, we're ready to close it all out. And so you have a couple of choices here. If you hit the save button again, it will save it as an out and back. Or there's actually an SOB button. It doesn't mean what you think it does. It's actually out and back. So save out and back. So if I hit that,
Save complete.
so it says save and then complete. So it's ready to go. Now, if you were doing a loop, there's a little extra step you have to do. So what you would do is you would actually take the train, you would drive it all the way around to the beginning point again, which is our first station we started over by the first tower. And then once you have it over there, then you'd scroll through the announcements again to get back to the original announcement you started on that stop. So you want to do the same one. And then you can either hit the save button or you can do the other button, which is the loop, the SLP, and that does the same thing. It'll say save and complete. So if you're doing a loop, you have to sort of have an extra step in there. If you're just doing the out and back, then it's one less step that you do on the remote when you're ready to go. So when you're ready to actually start the whole process, the first thing you want to do is actually obviously power up the trolley again, get it running in normal manual mode, and get it back to the original position you started at. So that's what we're going to do first. So we're just going to change direction here and back it up to our original position. And you want to get it as close to the original position as possible. So obviously you can make a little mark or flag on the track or something, or however you want to do it. We're just playing here in the video, so we're just going to get as close as we can to the change direction there and just move it up a little. Right, just about right there, somewhere around there. I think we're a little ahead, but it's close enough to where we were, basically. So you're going to get it in the same position, and once you have it in the same position, we're going to get this now turned into auto mode. All right, so now we're actually just ready to start her up, and it's the same thing as before when I was showing you auto mode. Basically, now that we've programmed something, it overrode the default auto mode in the system, so that's gone, and now mine is in here. And so when I hit the MTC button again, I'm in trolley mode. If I hit FAS,
Auto mode.
I'm in auto mode. So now when I start it up, it's going to follow those 3 station stops that I just programmed in with those 3 specific announcements. Now, I did forget one thing, and that was, and I mentioned this earlier, which is when you're actually programming it and you're going from stop to stop, you should know the speed that you're going at. And that's the one thing I didn't do. I just used the thumb wheel to go up and down. So this may not stop at our station stops because I don't know what speed I should be starting it at, right? But what I should have done, basically, when I was programming it from the first one here, is I should have hit the quick set speed and then punched a number in here for an exact speed that it's going. and then stopped it at the other station stop, right? So that it's going the same speed and everything like that. Now it's supposed to be using the distance, so no matter what speed it's going at, it should get pretty close. But let's check it out. We'll find out if it actually does work or not. So I'm gonna put it at quick speed 10 on here, and then we'll see what happens. So I'm gonna do 10, and then let's watch it and see where it goes.
This stop, Howard Beach, JFK Airport.
That is our stop.
Connection is available to the JFK Air train.
That's pretty close to where we wanted it. Look at that.
Excuse me, buddy.
So our next stop should be over
This
here.
is an 8th Avenue Express. Please stand clear of the closing doors.
Turn the volume up a little bit.
Next stop, Broadway, Nassau, Fulton Street.
And that is the one we picked.
This stop, Broadway, Nassau, Fulton Street. This is the last stop.
And you notice how it said this is the last stop. Okay? Because it knows that's the last one I programmed. So it's a little past the tower, but it's pretty close.
Pardon me. This is an 8th Avenue Express. Please stand clear of the closing doors. Next stop, Howard Beach, JFK Airport.
So this is the out and back, right? So now we're going the opposite.
Howard Beach, JFK Airport.
And we're going to our
available to the JFK Air train.
JFK stop, right? Because that was our middle
Please
stop.
take newspapers and your personal belongings with you when you leave the train.
And again, it's pretty close to where we wanted it.
Pardon me. Passengers, please do not transfer train calls while the train is in motion. Next stop, Far Rockaway, Mott Avenue.
And that was our first stop. So we should be
This stop, Far Rockaway,
somewhere
Mott
around the
Avenue.
tower here.
This is the last stop.
And again, notice how it said the last stop. And that's pretty close. Now this will continue going back and forth until you take it out of auto mode. So again, if you want to take it out of auto mode, you go to MTC and then hit the FAS button.
Please
Okay.
watch the gap between the train and the platform.
And then you'll be in manual mode again. And then you control it just like you would normally any other time. So if I could shut it down right now. Alright, so pretty cool, right? And it works really well. So really, on your subway line, whatever type it is, whether it's a loop or an end-to-end type of subway line, you can program as many stops as you want to in between. You can see you do have to give it a little leeway, right? It's fairly accurate. I mean, we started it right at the front of the tower here and stuff like that. But, you know, the main hint is that when you are programming it, use the quick speed steps that are in the remote to do a set speed from one point to the other. Even though it's supposed to be using distance, I think if you do a consistent speed between the stops, then you will be able to get a more accurate stop. But even so, like if this was an end-to-end line right here, I could leave a little, like, you know, gap distance between the actual end of the line, say like here, and I'd always be within that range, right? So that's always just going from one end and back and forth and back and forth. And that's what I actually plan to do. So I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to do a loop on mine. It's going to be an end-to-end, so it's going to be cool watching this thing just automatically by itself, doing all these stops in between and then going back and forth. So really neat feature of the MTH Subway set that I like. The programming using these soft keys is a little cryptic, obviously. Once you learn them and you know what each soft key does, then it'll make more sense. But you know, some of the soft keys on the remote, you know, you get used to them. The S's always mean sounds, L for lighting. I'm not sure what M means exactly, but I do know now it's the trolley menu basically, and inside that menu is where you do all this stuff that's related to the subways and the trolleys. So I think that's about it. But it's a really nice looking set. It's got some great New York iconic station stops and great sounds, and looks like the subway control works really well too, so can't beat it. Just so you can kind of see on the inside here, you can see there are some benches in there, you can see some poles in there. If you actually look up, you'll see some little handles, like grab handles hanging down from the ceiling there. So it does have some details in it. It absolutely needs some people inside there though, for sure. So I'm not sure how easy these are to get the shelves off, so we'll have to see. But if we can get some figures inside there, that certainly would help and make it look a little bit more realistic. Since they're so well lighted on the inside, it would be a great idea to put some figures inside these cars. So they have a little bit of detail on them. You probably can't see it, but underneath here, there's actually have some roof vents right in there, little fan details and stuff like that. So pretty good for what you're getting on these cars as far as their detail goes. Alright guys, well I hope you enjoyed that video on these MTH R40 Subway cars and all the features and functions of them. As always, make sure you put your comments down below. If you haven't subscribed, hit the notification button to get notifications, and I will see you guys next time. Peace guys.